Hey, book besties. Welcome to More Than a Book Club podcast. I'm your host, Leyna.
And I'm your other host, LJ.
And we're talking about my mom's favorite book, Emma, today, which is a classic.
It is. And in fact, I have a little description from Goodreads if we want to give that to the people.
Yeah, so let's do it.
All right. So it was published on December 23rd, 1815. The culmination of, I know, yeah, it's older than I realized. The culmination of Jane Austen's genius, a sparkling comedy of love and marriage, beautiful, clever, rich, and single, Emma Woodhouse is perfectly content with her life and sees no need for either love or marriage. Nothing, however, delights her more than interfering in the romantic lives of others. But when she ignores the warnings of her good friend Mr. Knightley and attempts to arrange a suitable match for her protégée Harriet Smith, her carefully laid plans soon unravel and have consequences that she never expected. With its imperfect but charming heroine and its witty and subtle exploration of relationships, Emma is often seen as Jane Austen's most flawless work.
So I felt like I was going back to like AP Lit reading this book because it is a classic. I haven't read many classics, not since high school or college, I guess. I think that I kind of took a break from that, but it was fun to read. And I wish I would have asked my mom before this episode why that's her favorite book. I'm like, I can imagine, but I should have asked her why. But
that's okay.
Before we get started with that, before we dive into Emma, what have you been doing literary lately?
Well, I finished Emma since we last met, and I listened to it as an audiobook from the library because I own it digitally, multiple physical copies. I have at least 2, maybe 3. No, I know I have 3. And I just love it. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to try doing an audiobook. And it was absolutely delightful. It was so enjoyable. And it just, I think if I had just read it again, that I'm not sure I would have enjoyed it right now just because I'm busier. So it made it easier to listen in the car. And I highly recommend it. This is the week of audiobooks, apparently, because I listened to another audiobook from the library called True Crime from Texas Monthly. I just searched True Crime in our Cloud Library app, which I don't like it as much as Libby, but our McKinney library uses Cloud Library.
Is this like the magazine Texas Monthly?
Yes, from Texas Monthly.
Awesome.
And the two that came up, well, there were multiple that came up, but 2 of them were about Texas. And so I listened to both of them because they weren't super long. But this particular one was 4 articles adapted to an audiobook and read by different people. And, you know, when I looked, it appears that it's only adapted into an audiobook. So if you want to read it, you would have to find the issues probably online of Texas Monthly. But it was 4 crimes that related to Texans. Some of them happened outside of Texas, but they all involved Texans. And I had not heard of any of the crimes, so it was fun. And then I did another one called Island Indictments, and it was all about crimes on Galveston Island over the years, like historical up to pretty modern times. And I will say, while it was interesting, it was not nearly as detailed as I would have liked. So I think it could have been better. When I looked on Goodreads, the average rating was 2 point something, and I didn't see that before I listened. I gave it 3 stars because you can't do half stars on Goodreads, but I would say it's more of a 2.5, and that's what I gave it on Storygraph, since you can give half stars, but I'm not sure I would recommend it. But again, I think I might have had heard of one of the crimes, but the rest I didn't. So that was kind of interesting. What about you? What have you been up to literary lately?
I also finished Emma because I felt like a mad dash reading it because it's a British narrator. For the audiobook, I have to listen to it slower. So I was listening to it at 1 times for most of it, and then I sped it up to 1.25 because it was like a 16.5 hour audiobook. So it's long. So it did take me a long time to read that. And I told myself I couldn't start anything else until I finished that. So that was my impetus to get that done. And as soon as I did finish that, I started The Love Haters. And that's the Catherine Sinner book. We had gone to go see her was that 2 weeks ago? I'm not sure. But I was not really a fan of it. I was kind of very sad that I wasn't a fan. This was for The Love Haters. I gave it 3 stars. And I know you had said that like the had some body image and it felt a little preachy. I didn't feel the preachiness of it. I think that I just didn't connect with the main character enough. And then her boss or supervisor or whatever, Cole, I did not care for him. I thought he was strange. And the relationship with the other main character, the male main character, it just felt really weird. Like that whole thing felt weird. I wanted more of the male main character. I wanted more of the Coast Guard because it was almost like he works for the Coast Guard and that's a reason for them to be together. But then it didn't really do a whole bunch of Coast Guardy stuff until the very end. And I felt like if it would have been sprinkled throughout a little bit better, that would have been good. And then after I finished that, I did start reading Ginny Hale's Out of the Blue. It's one that she had sent us. I'm loving it. It's a summer romance, but it's a high school guidance counselor. So I thought that it was very appropriate to start that one first because she had sent us 2 books. So it starts out at the end of the school year and is going into summer. And I am really enjoying it. It's just a sweet book. And I guess we'll talk a little bit more about that whenever we do interview Ginny Hale, because we are going to be interviewing her, which I'm super excited about.
Me too.
And then I also started Death at a Highland Wedding by Kelly Armstrong. And Kelly Armstrong, she has a lot of books out there, but this is a Rip Through Time series, and it's about a police detective from Canada that goes to visit her grandma. Something happens and she gets strangled, and then while she's getting strangled, she ends up in a rip through time and put back into, I think it's 1800s Scotland. She's back there and she's in someone else's body. But it's a weird romance, mystery, historical fiction, all rolled up into one. So she's a detective. The person that she ends up living with is an undertaker who's like a doctor slash undertaker. And they go on all kinds of different little mystery things. They're at a Highland wedding and then someone dies. So now they're trying to figure out what's going on. So very fun. And I will say I got to go to Barnes and Noble twice this week, which I feel like I haven't been to Barnes and Noble in a long time, but I took my daughter and her friend to a mall. And then I sent LJ this because I thought it was just so cool. There was a book and it's a journal type thing, reading guide only for Agatha Christie novels. And it has all the Agatha Christie's in there. And then it would say okay, how did you rate it? Did you figure out who did it? And I was like, what a fun idea, especially for LJ, because you read them, but I would think you've read almost all of them.
I would, I don't know that I have because she has so many.
So many.
I do know my cousin Ramsey. I think she might have read all of the Hercule Poirot books.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the others. She's probably closer. I would say maybe I've read half of them, but that's still a lot of books for her.
And I think we talked about it last episode that she started early 1900s and went all the way through the 40s and 50s. So she has just a huge backlist of books to go read. But I thought this was cool because sometimes LJ will be like, I think I read that one, but I'm not sure. And then you could also denote in there if it has a second or third name, because some of her books do, or they change the name halfway through.
That's what's been the problem with one in particular, because I had read the book and it was titled What Mrs. McGillicuddy Saw. And then our book club chose, was it 410 to Paddington?
From Paddington, yeah.
Or something, or from Paddington, and it was the same book. But then when I realized that, I was like, oh, I think I know what happens. And then I was totally wrong. So it was fine. It was like reading a whole new book.
That's what I found at that Barnes & Noble. And then yesterday, I went to Barnes & Noble with my sister. We went, or walking around doing some shopping, and we were going through and we found the Filthy Rich Fae book. Out in the Wild, the Geneva Lee. And that's, again, we're going to be interviewing her for her new release of her second book in the Filthy Rich Fae series that I believe comes out soon. So I
think it might be out already, actually.
Fallen Court. Yeah, I can't remember exactly when it comes out. I didn't see it at Barnes & Noble, but I saw the first one. And I was like, hey, that's what we're reading.
Let's see here.
That was pretty exciting.
Yes, it is. Oh, no, that's the Filthy Rich. Hang on. It's not giving me, so maybe it's not out. I don't know. It's fine. Just to clarify, you guys, if I either sound weird or if you're watching and you keep seeing me coughing but don't hear it, it's because I'm muting myself. I am having really bad allergies, and I don't normally suffer from allergies but a couple of days a year. So I really should investigate what blew in Thursday afternoon, because it's been 3 days. I'm doing a lot better today, but yesterday I thought I was going to die. So I need to look that up and see, because I don't suffer from allergies typically.
I know, like, my sister and I were both, our eyes were red after we walked around outside yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
And I assumed it was cottonwood because
Maybe.
I've been seeing that blowing around, but it is
Maybe.
no fun having allergies.
No, it's not.
So that's kind of all I've been doing. I did talk to my sister, though, and she did listen to our episode about reading slumps, and she started Inheritance Games.
Yay!
So I'm like, I want to hear what she thinks about it.
I love that book so much.
And it's one of those things, whenever you recommend a book to someone, you're like, I hope you like it as much as I did.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Now I have to share something really stupid I said. Was that last episode?
It was
or the
last episode.
So we're talking about Out of Africa and Circling the Sun. I'm talking about those. And I said, I don't know where it takes place, maybe Australia. And I want to say, like, obviously Out of Africa. That makes me sound really dumb. But maybe I was thinking Circling the Sun, even though
We had been talking about Leanne Moriarty and who's the other author? But we've been talking about Australian authors, so I can totally see where Australia might have come up. And even as you were saying it, I was thinking, like, maybe, it's out of Africa. Maybe they're going out of Africa to Australia.
I mean, that was so nice of you to think that. So if you ever think that you said something dumb, just know that you did not say that you weren't sure if Out of Africa took place in Australia. So at least there's that. Feel better about yourself and the things you say.
It did make all of us laugh, though, after LJ pointed that out.
Oh, yeah. I burst out laughing because I laugh at myself. I'm like, it's fine. I say stupid stuff. We all do. It's fine. But yeah.
Good times.
Entertainment for everyone. And I did it to make you all feel better. So when you say something stupid, just remember, at least I did not, ponder whether Out of Africa took place in Australia or not.
She's just making all of us feel better.
I am.
So what did you think of Emma? Like, first takes. I know that you've read this several times, but
I have, and I enjoyed it just as much as any other time that I've read it. I will say different things kind of jumped out to me, and one of the things that really stood out to me, I was like, this is a book of gossip. The whole thing.
1,000%.
You know what she did really, I love it. I love that she did that. But what I think is really interesting is because so much of the book is this gossip. Mm-hmm. Despite that, they say show, don't tell, but she has a way of showing even through dialogue, mm-hmm. rather than just make it like you're reading, someone just telling you the things. And I think it has a good, healthy mix either way, but she does a good job of showing at the same time that she's telling. And if you really think about the whole book, there's not much action, actually. It's mostly gossip.
It's a lot of suppers.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, man, they're just doing a lot of suppers and getting together, little parties, balls, but like there's not a ton of stuff that actually happens. It just makes me wonder what these people back in this was 1815, what were their daily lives like?
Right. And we've got
really like this where they were just so frivolous and didn't do anything.
We're seeing the rich. So that is definitely what we have to remember. Even like, obviously, even the people like the Coles that she was looking down on and then was dying for an invite and then went. Even people like that maybe are not quite to her level or her status, her class, they still were also rich. Like they mm-hmm. weren't doing the work. They had hired workers for whatever they were doing. I thought that was, they just looked like they had nothing better to do than to gossip. And even like Jane Fairfax had been taken out and been raised with a wealthy family, and then her coming back, like preparing to become a governess, because that was something that more of an upper class woman could do.
She was educated. Yeah.
because she was educated. And so I thought that was really interesting. And we really, just, I mean, yeah, I guess we could go into them with this. Like the class distinctions were a big part of
Hmm.
this, but it cracked me up that Emma, knowing that Harriet's parentage, that she was likely illegitimate, but to her, she was at Emma's standard in her eyes. But then the Martins, who
We're below it.
were considered below it, even though they were upstanding. And I love that Knightley considered Mr. Martin, who I cannot remember his name to save my life, his first name, Mr. Martin, that
Yeah.
Mr. Knightley considered him a friend of good sense. And Mr.
Mhm.
Knightley and Emma were at least at the same level, in
Mhm.
class and money and everything.
I think for me, I enjoyed the book. I gave it 4 stars. It was my first time ever reading it. It was a little bit confusing sometimes with the characters because there's a lot of characters. I even started in my notes like listing them out, and I'm like, oh my gosh, there's just too many. I was like, there's just too many characters. But there was some helpful guides on Pinterest. There was Spark Notes. There was a Jane Austen fandom website that had all the information and more than you could ever want. So if you are ever reading a Jane Austen book and you're like, what does that mean? Go to that because it has everything there. I personally don't know if I liked Emma. Like,
Yeah.
I liked some of the other characters in the book, but I'm like, Emma, she was a gossip. She was full of herself. She thought she knew better
And she
just
was
because.
young.
Yes. And she was 21. Just, yeah, I just had some issues with some of it. And that's probably a big part of the class distinction that you were mentioning, because she thought she was so much better than literally everyone. And maybe she was. Maybe they had money and land and resources. But then it made me think, would people actually like her if she didn't have those things? Or were they just playing up to that because she had more titles and land and whatnot, or her
Well,
father did?
I do think they clearly had money because she mentioned that she did not need to bother marrying, that
Hmm.
she was wealthy, that she did not need money from a marriage. She didn't need to be taken care of. And she was content living with her father, who she ultimately knew she could not actually ever leave because of just
His
his
character.
his character, his anxieties and
And I
everything.
think that was one of my favorite lines of the whole book, where she was like, I think she's talking to Harriet, and Harriet says something to the effect of like, oh, but do you want to be like poor Mrs. Bates? Because she's a
Hmm.
single woman, she's a spinster. And Emma's like, oh, well, that's only sad if you're poor, but I'm not poor, so it's fine. It's perfectly
Right.
acceptable.
Right. And
And
she's not wrong there.
no, she's not. And she could have taken care of herself and done everything that she needed to do.
Hmm.
And it was just a very big class distinction. But then you have the Jane Fairfax, who I can't remember,
Okay, you
her
want me to
parents had died, right?
Okay, so here's why I think part of the Bates were respected in the community. They might not have been quite as high class I mean, currently at this time, they're not at all, but I think they were from a good family. And I think they had a sister who married, right, whoever Fairfax, because they're the Bateses. And their sister married him. And then they had their daughter. And then I think he had all the money. I mean, I don't know that their family had money. I don't know if like it all went to her dowry. We don't know when her
Right.
parents died or
Yeah.
anything. But after that, I believe all the money was tied up in his stuff. And so that left Jane penniless essentially. But I think they at one time had been a good family. So I think people took care of them because they were poor. I also wonder, this is such a small town, if maybe they were the poorest people, because we didn't hear as much about anyone else that they were taking care of. So we don't know if they're taking care of a bunch of people out that just aren't mentioned, or this is a good family, so they take pity on them. But the way they treat Jane Fairfax makes it seem like, and just not the Bateses, obviously it's their niece, so they
Niece.
are
Yeah.
granddaughter and niece, so they are, totally enamored with her. But I do think that it seems like she must have come from a good family. She just doesn't have money anymore. And so that's how she's
And Jane
related to
Fairfax
this.
was my favorite character in the whole book.
Really?
Yes, I was like, she is a spitfire. And when her romance didn't go the way that she had wanted it to. She was like, deuces, I'm going to go do what I want to do and take care of myself if you're not willing to recognize me. And so she was out.
Okay, so this is what's funny. In my other reads of this book, I cannot stand Jane Fairfax because she
Hmm.
does answer a lot of questions with non-answers. And I found that so frustrating. And I get it, she's holding secrets. But this time when I was reading it, I started to think of the book Sense and Sensibility. And we know so much from Eleanor's perspective because she's a main character. So we're with her, not just in public, we're with her behind the scenes and everything. And so I thought, what would Eleanor Dashwood as a background character, what would she look like? She would look like Jane Fairfax because she would not divulge information that would hurt anyone else. And it actually made me respect and like her. When I've never liked her, I found her annoying because she wouldn't give any information. And I think that Jane Austen, in some sense, wanted her to be a hard character to figure out, wanted us to think about these
Yes.
things. And she knew some people were going to be like me. And I think it was a more superficial view, whereas you, and also a younger view, you have more wisdom. We have more wisdom now that we can see the complexity of her character.
And I saw her as, even before I knew anything about the romance or the secrets or anything, but she's being plucked from her regular life.
Mm-hmm.
She's has this very doting aunt and then grandmother, and they think everything she does is fantastic, but maybe she also sees that as not reality
Mm-hmm.
because she is very demure.
Yes.
She also, I would think that you would have to know that these little towns have their gossip circles,
Oh,
and she
yeah.
has to know that her family, like you said, they don't have the money anymore, that has to be tied up in some of the gossip. So I would think I saw her more as like a closed off character. And then whenever Mrs. Elton came into the scene and was trying to adopt her or whatever, she was very much like, no, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And before we even knew the reason, it was like, I'm shutting that down. But
Mm-hmm.
almost like she didn't want to put up with Mrs. Elton's BS for whatever reason, because everybody else was kind of frustrated with her and didn't really like her, but they
Yeah.
were accommodating because she was a society lady. And
Yes.
Jane Fairfax was like, no, no, we're not doing this.
Well, and I think that Mrs. Elton took, like, she did try to take her under her wing and she like attached herself to her
Yes.
because Jane was too polite to, kind of stay away from her unless she had to see her, from what we
Hmm.
can tell. And I think that was part of the lot of the Bateses, is that everyone could go check on them, and everyone did go check on them and, visit them, provide for them in some ways. And kind of going back to your, like, why did people like Emma? Like, not real world people, but in the story,
Right.
is because I think she had this facade of like, I'm so nice, and she didn't show that other side of herself to very many people. And I think like Knightley saw so much of that. And then, but people, I think he could read her very well. He knew her, and probably some of the others could too. But I think she went out of her way because, especially to some degree for a long time with Mrs. Bates, is because, and this kind of goes back to Jane Fairfax too, is Jane Fairfax heard all the gossip from her aunt, from her aunt's
Right.
letters. And so she knew, like, I got to hold this stuff in to protect myself and protect others for whatever I know. And Emma also relied on Mrs. Bates to some degree for that too. They all did. They knew they would get that. But Emma also saw, okay, again, what I don't want to get out, don't tell Ms. Bates. So but she was nice to her until that awful scene.
That
And
awful
I remember,
scene. I felt so bad for her. And then I was like, Emma, you're just the worst. And I was so happy that Knightley yelled at her for it.
yes,
It called her
yes.
out.
And I do think that was partially because of she, Harriet, and Frank, all young,
Hmm.
all immature. And they had all been, I feel like we only got a glimpse of all their conversations. And I think Frank Churchill is like, he stirs the pot. He likes to stir the pot. I think he has fun with that. And especially
A
knowing that
lot.
he's trying to hide this information. I think he delighted in being
Hmm.
able to mess around. And I do agree with Emma when she thought, or he even said in the letter that he was about to tell her right before he left, and I think they were interrupted, so he wasn't able to. I think he wanted to get her in on the ruse because he knew she would jump right in. He could read her well,
Mhm.
just like I think she read him well from the beginning. And she had Harriet Smith under her wing. And I think them exchanging looks and the little comments, the pokes and stuff. And Knightley was seeing all of this right before that awful comment to Miss
Mhm.
Bates.
And I think what really endeared me to Knightley was that he called her out on several occasions. Like whenever
Mm-hmm.
she, had Harriet turn down Mr. Martin, he was like, she could have been very happy with him. And why did you meddle? Also, whenever that happened with Mrs. Bates, he also called her out and he wasn't afraid of her like some of the other people were. And maybe
No.
that was because of the gossip. I mean, he even said it that people look up to her, and
Mm-hmm.
her saying that about Mrs. Bates was going to carry that on for other
Yes.
people to be able to do that and treat her poorly. So,
And that's how we can also see that she broke her facade there
mhm,
because she felt empowered by these other people and she was showing off. She was showing off and it backfired.
in a big way.
And thankfully, I feel like I think Knightley was right. And I can guess, like, I can think of which characters would jump on that. But I think a lot of them, it probably was like, okay, so Emma's not perfect.
Mhm.
And not to make them be endeared more to her, but it was like they saw this perfect, she was knocked off her pedestal. She knocked
Yes.
herself off
Yes.
her pedestal. But they were going to forgive her because she's Emma.
And okay, I think we have to talk about Mr. Elton. I did not like him at all from the beginning,
Nope.
and I didn't understand why she was trying to put her newfound friend Harriet, like to attach her to him, and why she thought that was going to be a good thing, because he just seemed like a sniveling
Weasel.
snake. Yeah, I'm like, I did not like him.
Yeah.
Why would she try to do that if she had so much care and compassion for Harriet, which makes me think that she didn't?
So here's the deal. It had nothing to do with personality. I don't think that Emma didn't understand love until the end.
Hmm.
Because even when we think about her feelings for Frank Churchill, like we never heard her say how she missed him when he wasn't there. Like we did not get
I
a
think she
sense
even
that they're
said she did not miss him.
right. And she was not pining after him. And so I don't think she really understood love enough to understand. Like she saw love as like a hindrance for what you need to do. And like we see that even when she was worried that Knightley was going to fall in love with Jane Fairfax and they were going to get married, have their own kids, and then her nephew would not inherit that through Knightley's brother and all this
Hmm.
stuff. So with that, I think she saw Mr. Elton as someone who could take care of Harriet, had a lot of money, and was local, and it would allow her, if she got married, to stay friends, even though I like to believe that because of Knightley's respect and care for Mr. Martin, that they still stayed close because Mr. Knightley was not a snob like that. But I think she was looking for someone that fit the level of what she felt was okay. And I say this too because I did happen to watch Clueless this morning. And watching that, did you watch it today? Okay, so you see Elton, who is the Mr. Elton character,
Hmm.
he's awful from the beginning too. But
Yes.
he's status in her eyes, he is better than Martin. Robert Martin, I think that's his name. Robert Martin. I should just call him Mr. Martin because what if it's not Robert? Mr. Martin was better than, no, Mr. Elton was better than Mr. Martin in Emma's eyes because of
Hmm.
status and class. And then in the movie Clueless, in Cher's eyes, Travis was, you know,
A loser.
uncool.
Yeah,
He was a loser. And Elton was newly single in their group of friends. And she's like, perfect, even though he's clearly a douche.
clearly.
So, yeah. So I think that's why. I don't think it had anything to her liking Mr. Elton.
And I think that he ended up with who he was meant to end up with, because she was
Oh
just
my
as awful
gosh.
as him.
Yes. Yes. Did you watch the movie Emma
I did.
too?
So we had talked about watching the movie Emma, and then we had talked about Clueless, and so I was like, I'm going to make that happen. So last night I watched Emma, and it's the 1996, 1995 version with Gwyneth Paltrow, and Toni Collette was Harriet, which
Mm-hmm.
I had the hardest time placing her. I'm like, I know that actress. Who is it? That cast was stacked.
It really
Stacked.
was. It
So
was.
it was fun to see all the big name characters
Mm-hmm.
and see it. I actually thought that I enjoyed the movie more than I enjoyed the book. And it
That
helped me
makes sense.
understand things a little bit more because some of the things that like her old nanny, her governess, Miss Taylor,
Yes.
I think that's part of why I kept getting confused because she had gotten married and they kept
Mm-hmm.
calling her Miss Taylor and not by her married name.
Oh yeah, because well, the dad kept calling her Miss
Yes.
Taylor, and then
And I
everyone
was
else
like,
called
wait
her
a
Mrs.
minute.
Weston. Yeah.
And I was like, who's Weston? And then I was like, they must be really old because Frank Churchill is Mr. Weston's son. So
But
then I
that's
was,
where, yeah,
yeah,
Mr. Weston must have been
older.
decently old. Yeah. But okay, so one of the things that I completely missed is that, like, all of a sudden she has a baby. And I'm like, what happened? There were two times that something was mentioned that I noticed this time. I'm like, maybe that's referencing it, but not really. Because when Miss Weston had her baby, I was like, what the heck? Where did this come from? And I was like, did I skim too fast? But I was listening to the audiobook, so I did not skim this time. But
I remember she had a baby, but I don't think they really mention it much. I know
no,
that the father says something about like, why would she want to have sniveling children of her own or something like that. The
right?
dad was hilarious. He
Yes.
cracked me up. He was like the comedic relief of talking about, stay away from the baby. She's a germ fest.
Yes.
And
Yep.
always worried about like, oh, we're all going to catch cold and we're going to have sore
Hmm.
throats. And at first I was thinking, why are they so worried about sore throats? But they're probably, I mean, there were not antibiotics back then.
Hmm.
So if you got strep throat, that could turn bad. It could turn, was it rheumatic fever or scarlet fever, where it would
Something
cause
like
heart
that.
problems. So, I mean, that could be a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what we would take for granted now, we can just go to the doctor and get it taken care of within 24
Hmm.
hours. Back
They
then, that
couldn't.
was not the case. And I was like, how awful.
So I felt like in the movie, Alan Cumming
Hmm.
was perfectly cast as Mr. Elton. He's really good at playing roles. Like I think I've talked about it before. Friends, there's something, Circle of Friends is another one where he's worse than that one because he actually like attacks Minnie Driver's character. But I think he does such a good job in this with his character. And I think Juliet Stevenson as Mrs. Elton, oh my gosh, she brought that character to life
To
so
life.
well, where she's like, well, some say that my musical quality is not whatever, like bad, like all of this stuff.
But I couldn't say that about myself. But my
No, like
friends say,
it's such false modesty. And I kind of love that about, I mean,
hmm,
they're horrible, but I loved the two of them
together.
together. I think they played that role together. And the part that makes me like straight up not like them was what they did to Harriet at the dance.
Yes, they were
And
so rude.
I loved the update in Clueless where the same thing happened at a party where not exactly, but like Ty is standing there. And I would say Amber is kind of the Mrs. Elton
Yes, she's
character.
supposed to be.
Yeah, and so she sees her dancing with Elton, and she's all sad, and she's standing there, and Cher or our Emma is like, "Oh, this is awful," and then our Mr. Knightley slash Josh goes and saves her,
Hmm.
and it even like when Cher says, "Oh, he never dances," well, that was
Hmm.
Knightley. Knightley never danced either, and so I just love how they did that
And
updated
saves
thing,
them,
and it like
which
they did try to keep similar things
hmm,
to
I
the they
had
tried.
to laugh so hard because the band playing at the Valley Party is the Mighty Mighty Boss Tones. And it's a famous ska band. They had their moment, I think, Clueless, and they were in a couple other movies that kind of propelled them. But oh my gosh, the way that the people were dancing to the Mighty Mighty Boss Tones, it cracked me up because I'm like, that is not like Cher and the guy
The
Christian were
Christian.
dancing, and I'm like, no, you would not dance to the Mighty Mighty Boss Tones like this. And
Okay,
it made me laugh.
So I listened to an audiobook by whoever was in charge, like whoever came up with the idea of Clueless, and I can't remember her name. It wasn't Amy, but it's not Amy Sherman Palladino because that's a different one. But they did a whole thing and it talked about going through it and the actors and everything. And that musical group, they were drunk as skunks in that scene. And I think I might have also watched a documentary about it, but they were really drunk because they were nervous to do
Mhm.
it and they just kept drinking. And so it's like, you can't tell, but we're pretty trashed up there.
That
I thought
is
that was a
hilarious
funny little bit.
tidbit.
So, and I do know that when they brought Paul Rudd in as Josh, I think he showed up for his audition in like, I don't know. But you know those shirts like that we all had with like messages and stuff like silly like ones like from Abercrombie and everything. So like he showed up in something like he was very and like maybe even a flannel and I think that they like ran with it. Now if someone's listening you're like you're getting this wrong, I'm sorry, but that's what I remember and just being like that they like kind of knew like no, this is the vibe we kind of
Which,
want
seeing
from him.
Paul Rudd as a young Paul Rudd, I'm like, he really has not changed.
No, he
Not very
hasn't.
much. I think he's gotten better with age,
Yes.
mostly because he's gotten funnier more than
He
anything else.
has.
And the roles
He
he's
has.
gotten have
Mhm.
gotten funnier. But it was
Mhm.
fun to see that and see the characters come to life and to see Cher still taking care of her dad, just like Emma took care of Mr. Woodhouse.
Mhm.
That was still very relevant. A lot of it was still like Cher's mom had died, so
Mhm.
it had Emma's. I found it strange that Emma, her dad had such an aversion to marriage, but then Emma was so set on marrying off her friends and getting
Yeah.
everyone together. But she, even after her and Knightley ended up together, she was like, well, I can't marry you because I can't leave my dad. So
Yeah.
whenever he dies, maybe we'll get together.
Mhm.
And I thought that was a little strange that she was such a devoted daughter that she was like, I'm just going to set aside my own happiness until
Mhm.
my dad dies. And she had,
Yeah.
in the movie, they made several references where she's like holding a baby or, looking at the children and, enjoying them. And
Yes.
all I could think about whenever she said that was, what if he lives for another 10 to 15 years and you never get to have children?
Mhm.
And that made me a little sad that she would risk
Yeah.
that, I guess. But
Well, and I think she just had accepted her lot, and I think she also was not one of the girls chasing romance.
mhm.
You know, like that was not as important to her, which I think is true for a lot of people. That was not me. I was always boy crazy, but I think that like I've definitely had friends that are like, "Why do you care so much? Why do you want a boyfriend so badly?" And so maybe that combined with like she just understood how her dad was. I don't know. But yeah, I agree. And it was interesting the way they updated that in Clueless because Cher was the way they did it not interested in dating a high school boy. That was her excuse.
Mhm.
And so, yeah,
And I will
I
say
don't
I
know.
did not finish Clueless today because
Oh yeah. I
I
fast forwarded through the end. It was right before we were recording, even though I've seen it. So I was like watching it on Apple as it like went through, but yeah.
like I don't remember the ending of Clueless and I didn't get to watch it. So
So the ending is where Mrs. Geist and Mr. Hall get married. You see
okay.
like the back of people and she's like, well, you can guess what happened after she and Josh kiss. And then it's them. She's like, as if like this is California, not Kentucky. And so it's them. So I thought that was kind of fun. The way they rearranged that
hmm
storyline to have Miss Taylor
Happy
and
ever
Mr.
after.
Weston.
Yeah.
And so that was fun. And then we get to see them all hanging out at the wedding reception with the guys, their boyfriends, and so it is kind of fun that way to watch. And then they do like there's a well, I guess they messed that up because Harriet did get married before Emma, I think.
hmm
But in it, they're like there's a pool. Like Paul Rudd's character's like there's a pool for who's catching the bouquet. It's up to $200, and she's like it's in a bag, and she fights to get her bouquet. But yeah, so that is how it ends. And the book ends with Emma's wedding, right?
hmm
So that was the best way they could do it. They could not do that in Clueless without it being quite scandalous. Well, I got another update that I like too. When Christian saves Ty, because remember Frank Churchill saves Ty
Yeah.
from, or saves Harriet from the Gypsies.
Hmm.
And then in this, the guys are like hanging her down. And anyway, but yeah, I don't know. I thought that was a fun thing. And then in the movie, in Cher, she was jealous of the attention that Harriet was getting. Whereas in the book, she's like, oh, this would be perfect. Harriet, because she couldn't, I mean, we knew Christian was gay in the movie, so that
Right.
wouldn't have worked.
Which I had forgotten that. And then as soon as they started getting together, I'm like, I don't think he likes women. I'm pretty sure he's gay.
Yep.
And then it was like, oh, he is.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I thought that this was fun. I think that I have only read Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. You mentioned Sense and Sensibility, and I don't think I've read that. I think we
Which we're
have that on
reading it in
our,
August. We're
yeah,
reading
we
it in
have it.
August.
Yeah. Um,
When you read
so
Persuasion,
did I?
did you read it with us? We did it for book club. I don't know if you
Then I
finished it.
probably did. I'm like, I don't
That's the
remember
one
anything about it.
That's the one where she had been in love with a man that was considered beneath her, and he went off and came back a captain in the Navy, and she's not as pretty as she once had been. And then, but now he's elevated to the right status, and like her sister-in-laws, they're kind of hoping that one of them will get with him, but then he ends up writing this letter to Anne Elliot, and they end up together. This doesn't
Kind
sound
of
familiar.
vaguely sounds familiar. I can't imagine I didn't read a book club book. That's where I'm like, usually I tried to read the book club
Hmm.
books, but
Persuasion is her last book
mhm.
that was published. Well, not that was published, that was written. And she, it kind of gives us hope that maybe at the end Jane Austen did get a little bit of a love story.
Maybe we did talk about that because it mirrored her own life where
Mm-hmm.
um it was like later in life and Jane Austen had had like a very similar
Mm-hmm.
romance that
Yes.
died out. Okay, I am remembering that.
We read it 3 years ago because Allison gave it 5 stars 3 years ago. It doesn't show you on here for me.
Maybe I didn't.
Maybe you didn't, but you probably were there for the discussions.
Probably.
All
Like
right,
what was
well,
3 years ago? That was 2022. That seems
mm-hmm.
like so long ago.
I know. I was married in 2022 still.
Wow.
The whole year. It was the last whole year that I was married. So, yeah, I know it's crazy to think back then.
That was my 40th birthday.
Oh, God, that was our 40th birthday year. Ugh. I keep forgetting that I'm turning 43. And I'm like, no, that sounds too close to 45, which is then
Hmm.
mid 40s.
We're
And
we're firmly in midlife. My sister and I,
I
whenever we were out
know.
yesterday, because 2 years ago we had gone out, we went to a arts and crafts show for like
Okay.
a Christmas festival, and I texted Derek and I was like, "Hey, just FYI, Kristen and I are getting our noses pierced." He was like, "Wait, what?" He was like, "You went with your mom and your sister to an arts and crafts show, and you're getting your nose pierced." But yesterday we were both like, "We should go get something pierced," and I was like, "What is it that right now?" I want to go get tattoos,
I want to go get a
piercings.
tattoo. Like, okay, I just got paid for my camp this week,
Hmm.
and I will text you the amount that I got. So I mean, it's supposed to go into savings, but I could use a little bit to splurge, you know? I mean, I'm just saying. I'm sending you the text right now.
But oh, dang. LJ's
Yeah.
got bank. I need to become
Yeah.
a speech teacher.
I know. I know. It's a lot of fun. I really do love this
Yeah.
company. They're family run and they're awesome. I love
It
them.
makes a
I
big
love working with
difference when
them.
you love the people that you work with. I think that
Oh,
does make a
yeah.
difference.
It does make a difference.
I know that I want to get a tattoo, but I want to wait till the end of pool
Oh,
season
yeah, you
because
said the end of pool season.
you can't swim with a new tattoo.
It's like only for like 2 weeks. I know because I've gotten a summer one before. I've gotten two in the summer actually. My first two were both in the summer, and it was only 2 weeks, I think.
And it's
Let me see.
ironic because I don't really like I used to do triathlons and I swam like
Yeah.
every day, but I don't do that anymore. So it's not going to impede that, but it's more of
Yeah.
I want to be able to take my daughter to the pool. But
No, I
maybe,
get that.
yeah,
I'm looking it up. Okay, never mind. It says at least 2 to 4 weeks. Dang it.
But I do stand by. LJ and I are going to the Texas Book Festival in November. It's in Austin.
Yes.
And I've been wanting to go for several years now. And I finally talked to LJ into it. We're going to go. It's going to be so much fun. We already got our hotel booked.
We do.
But I was telling her, I was like, that might be something fun to do while we're down there is book some appointments for tattoos.
Yes.
And have a fun weekend because that would be something I would be down for. And we could have
definitely
vacation tattoos.
Yes. I think we should do that. I think we definitely have to. We should, because that gives time for you to research. I say you because I feel like you will have a better idea. Because how many tattoos do you have?
1, 2, 3, 4. I have 4.
Okay,
But
you have the same amount of me.
I have 3 larger
substantial
tattoos. Yeah.
You do. So I feel like I would trust you being like, this is the place we're going. These are the tattoo artists or artists. Because if I feel like if I pick it, I'm just going to be like Joe Schmo on the internet. Okay, that looks
did
good.
get my Iron Man tattoo in Austin.
Okay.
And a friend had told me about that place. And it has words on it. And this is where I said I would never get a tattoo with words on it again. Because my tattoo, it says, it's the quote from A League of Their Own. It's the heart that makes it great. Because he's telling her, you know, if it was easy, everyone would do it. It's the hard that makes it great. It's the challenge of doing it.
Yeah.
Whenever he did the tattoo, and like he had it on the paper and let you look at it beforehand. Everyone in the shop had seen it. My brother looked at it, and then he tattooed me. And then when I got home, the apostrophe and it says I apostrophe TS.
No.
So we joke that's my no regrets tattoo.
No.
But he was able to fix it because I saw it. I was looking at it in like a mirror. I think a picture. I think my brother had taken a picture of it and I was looking at it and I was like, oh my gosh, that's what it says. And so I texted the guy immediately and he was like, I didn't see it. You didn't see it. Your brother didn't see it. Nobody in the shop saw it. But he was like, come in and we'll fix that. So there's like a little loop to the I and then he put it in an apostrophe. So you can't tell unless you look very closely at it. But I was like, I don't ever want to have to worry about that again. So I'm never going to get words tattooed anywhere ever again.
That's reasonable.
Because I would have regrets.
You would have, or I like the ones that say regrets, like R-A-G instead of regrets. Yeah. I think that's wise. But yeah, we should definitely do that this
Find
fall.
Something.
Yes,
that would be
for
fun.
sure. Yeah.
Okay.
So anyway.
We have plans.
Right, well, this is our shortest episode.
I think we did it. We have an episode under an hour.
Look at us. An episode under an hour. That hasn't happened since like our first 2.
Yes. Maybe even Claudia can listen.
Ooh, Claudia. We haven't mentioned her in a while. So
there you go.
I haven't bugged her about listening lately. So maybe I need to get on her. She has been recommending me books left and right like she always does. But I'm going to be like, how about you listen to the podcast instead?
Here are books that we recommend.
Yes. All right. Well, cool.
Well, we'll see you guys next week. Happy reading. In the meantime, I hope that if you haven't read Emma, maybe you'll give it a try. If it's been a long time, read it, listen to it, or if nothing else, go watch the movie. The movie was fun.
It's true. Oh, and we should tell them just in case you forgot, because we did do it on the next quarter books for this quarter. But our book club book for June, technically, even though this is coming out in June, is Frederick Bachman's My Friends. So if you want to...
and I'm excited to read that because a lot of people have said it's really good.
Yep, that's what I've heard. I mean, I'm just guessing we might not release that until July. But so you have time.
I have a vacation coming up, so we have to
we have to adjust
around.
Yeah. So you have lots of time. So
yes.
Get on those library holds.
Do it. All right, friends. Well, we will see you next time. Happy reading.
Bye.
Bye.
So thank you for listening to More Than a Book Club podcast. We are recorded and produced in McKinney, Texas.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening.